So 2016 has been a year of turbulence, uncertainty and crisis. Hideous year for some, especially politicians. We came close to the end of the world twice, once thanks to Brexit and then again 5 months later when 70% of Americans inexplicably either voted for Donald Trump or didn't vote at all. It's been a year where, in the run-up to the EU referendum, chancellors, economists and so-called experts called the end to our love affair with property. Those staunchly of a Remain persuasion attempted to convince us, some might say scare us, into believing that a vote to leave the EU would result in rising interest rates, falling employment, lower GDP growth and property prices that would evaporate quicker than one of Donald Trump's election promises. But so far, some 6 months later, the opposite seems to be true, with house prices in particular rising around 2% since the EU referendum. And so it seems that leaving the EU is perhaps not so bad after all, and that our economy as a whole is rather more robust than otherwise was predicted. It is early days, of course, given that Article 50, the dystopian-sounding precursor to commencing our rush towards the EU exit, will not actually be triggered until March 2017, followed, of course, by a 2-year process for government to get its divorce papers in order. And so there is still time for the financial carnage to ensue, but given that George Osborne and various others were adamant that the hurt would be felt straight away and that house prices would crash by 18% immediately, my personal view is that because that hasn't happened, it won't happen, and the housing market is rather more resilient and that we will not see drops in values. Except in London, that is, which is a whole different shooting match altogether. 2016 has been a decent year for the market generally, unless you are selling in the capital above £1 million or so. The previous Chancellor stuffed the higher end of the market with a hike in higher value stamp duty thresholds at the same time as introducing a slice rather than slab approach back in December 2014. Since then, though, that's meant that whilst the lower end has benefited from lower stamp duty levels overall, the top end, mainly in London, has been hit really hard with an increase in the levy from what it was previously to now 10% between 1 million and 1.5 million and 12% above that, which means that buying a £2 million property in London or anywhere else for that matter will cost you as much as £153,000 in stamp duty. Transactions also are down by up to 50% in some London areas, and that's resulted in the closure of a number of estate agency offices. Prime central London, therefore, is absolutely on its knees as far as house prices are concerned, and it's starting to see real value reductions. And as an example, Westminster has seen a fall in prices of some 6% in November alone. The various UK price indexes are reporting a fairly buoyant picture generally, but they do mask the reality of what's happening at the top end of the market. This year, we will see average prices across the country up by around 6% versus last year, but with London, especially the really chunky stuff, down by up to 10%. For most of us ordinary folk, though, we needn't worry too much. Cheap mortgage costs and the ever-present gap between demand and a continuing shortage of housing supply will continue to keep the value of your home somewhat higher still. So any reports of the death of the UK housing market are therefore very greatly exaggerated indeed. Thanks for watching.